adjust to bringing people around? Because you probably condition yourself to be such a
I'm closed
loner.
off. Yeah, I don't trust nobody. Like
Yeah.
it takes a while to get into like my space or, just to let you in there. So I'm like I said, when I said I'm working on it, I'm really like working on it now.
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Bit 91, your favorite dating and relationship coach. Listen, I love this particular aspect of this video because there is something that he said in conjunction with the whole entire interview, is that he said he doesn't trust people. Now, I've been doing a lot of work around attachment styles. If you don't know what that is, it simply is the way that we emotionally connect in relationships. There are 4 attachment styles based upon John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth's work: secure, dismissive, avoidant, anxious, and fearful avoidant. We're going to focus on dismissive avoidant once more again, because this is a core aspect of a dismissive avoidant person. And this is also, I believe, the reason why partly they broke up and divorced. Now, let me make this very clear. He said that he don't trust nobody, right? And he actually says it takes a long time for people to get into the circle.
Like today, but I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like it's clear as day now, like where I'm going. Like I've developed strength, like a certain strength where I feel like can't nothing stop me now. I'm actually.
Okay, so he actually adds an aspect, and it was probably in the previous clip, and I probably missed it. He actually said, obviously, in that previous clip, that what he felt was he doesn't trust people, and it takes a long time to trust them. Now, that's a core wound that's attached to a fear of being rejected. Why? Because in childhood, as a dismissive avoidant, what ends up happening is a child has been dismissed of their emotional needs. They've been rejected. So when they grow up, their fear is that they'll be rejected in relationships. When I look at Cory, how militant he is, sometimes when I saw him on Black Love, I saw how kind of militant he was a little bit. If you watch him in TikToks, he doesn't seem to want to engage as much, right? And I started looking at going, okay, what's actually happening here? They spoke about their marriage at one point, saying, it's not gushy gushy. And I was like, what does it mean that not gushy gushy? Oh, I know what it means when you say not gushy gushy. What you really mean is it doesn't have the thrills, it doesn't have necessarily the excitement per se, or the lovey-dovey aspect. And of course it doesn't. Because if you listen to his testimony, he grew up in Chicago, okay, and it was a very tough life. He grew up with his mother and I think his brother, as well. And so he grew up in a very tough life, and I think his mom passed away early too. So survival of the fittest. And at that point, when you're surviving, emotions are not your number one aspect. So whether his parents were able to meet his needs or not, whether they did it on purpose or not, makes no difference. The emotional needs of neglect that happens as a child forces a child to say, my needs emotionally are not important. They're not going to help me survive. So I just need to do what logically makes sense. And so what ends up happening is a suppression and repression, and then you quash it down. When you get to adulthood in relationships, one of the biggest core wounds is that I don't trust people. Why? Because if the parent caregiver could not give me what I wanted, whether it was on purpose or not, makes no difference. It's how the child is going to interpret what's happening to them. What's going to end up happening is a child learns that actually relationships are scary, and that scary in the sense of when I get emotionally close or intimate, when I have to share and open myself up to people, it's a scary place because I may not get my needs met. I'd rather not do that at all. It's too painful. Now, why is this important? Is because he said he doesn't trust nobody. Now, when it comes to trust, dismissives are the biggest ones. They do not trust anybody. When you get close to them, I'm one of them, so I know. When you get close to them, it's when they start showing up their real DA energy. You know what I'm saying, Chu? They start, you know what I mean? Like, that's when they start showing their true DA energy. And so it's really interesting to see how, it's really interesting to see how he said he doesn't trust nobody and his upbringing. Then also understanding how Tia and Tamira also grew up. They grew up in a military home. Both their parents were from the military. Now, it makes sense why she would go for someone like him, because he carries a military energy. That Cory's very you know what I mean? It's very similar energy, familiar to what she experienced with her parents. And the question is, how did Tia interpret the relationship that she got with her parents in an honest fashion? A lot of times when we talk about our parents, we might say, no, it was good, it was okay, it was good. And I have many clients that say this. If you're one of my clients, they say this a lot. It was good. And then when we really break it down, we start realizing not that it wasn't good, but your interpretation of what happened didn't make you feel maybe seen or heard or understood or even safe, right? Having two loving parents who put food on your table, a clothes on your back, and a roof over your head that tell you they love you from time to time, whatever, it's a great relationship. But how did you interpret it as a child, not as an adult? And as a child, how did you interpret it? Now, here's a key thing. She may have found someone with a familiar energy, but the reality is her needs may have not been met in a relationship. Now, am I only blaming him? No. I'm only giving one side of the coin because there's a flip side, right? But when he said, he said something later on as well, that he doesn't feel like he trusts people, but then he also said as well that he wants to play a role called Black Jesus. And I was like, why? And I realized, okay, because Cory, have you noticed, hasn't said nothing about this marriage? Nothing. He hasn't said anything bad. He's a protector, right? And because of that dismissive energy, those people that who have very high levels of protection for other people have often been unprotected themselves. So I can see why he doesn't want to talk about the marriage, because for him, it's about protecting Tia, protecting the kids, because he didn't get that same protection as a kid. Now, doesn't mean that his parents did it on purpose, doesn't mean his mom did it on purpose, doesn't mean his mom necessarily was failing. It just means that it is what it is, unfortunately. And because of that, it's made him very much so somebody wants to protect very, very heavily, right? And so within the conversation, they were talking about obviously how he doesn't feel like they asked him about, do you feel like you get the credit you deserve? And he was finding it hard to really kind of say that he doesn't necessarily, he's like, I don't look for it, you know? I don't look for it. And I was like, how come you don't look for it? And I want to play a little clip to kind of show you what I mean and interpret it how we need to interpret it, right? Let's just go to here. I want you to listen to this aspect. It's really important. Because it just adds a little flavor to what I'm saying. Here you go.
Frizz, I do feel that way.
You feel like you don't get the credit you deserve as an actor?
I'm not looking for it. I don't know.
You're not looking for it, but do you feel that way?
Nah, they'll give it to me when they're supposed to. Like, I get underrated, and how come you ain't more?
Now, if you actually listen to this segment fully all the way through, you will notice this. If you listen very carefully, what you're actually hearing is him downplaying. One thing that dismissives like to do is downplay things, right? Because they don't want to seem like a burden to people. So him saying, "Oh, I don't get the credit I deserve," you notice how he framed it. Oh no, I'll get it when I'll get it. But the reality is, you do feel like you've been underrated for a long while, right? And you don't want to seem like you're taking up too much space and too much room. Again, burden. Why? Because in your childhood, you were made to feel like when you were emotionally connected with a parent caregiver, right? Or if the parent giver could not give you what you needed emotionally, you couldn't get it. So you felt rejected. Not only did you feel rejected, you also felt like you had to shrink yourself, because if I do share my emotional needs, it won't get met. So I better shrink myself. And what that does is that when situations like this come about where you deserve credit, you're like, nah, I'm good. You try to play this low-key, humble flex. You're not humble. Really and truly, what you're doing is you're shrinking. You need to have audacity. And I realize that myself. I shrink myself a lot, right? And you shrink yourself in spaces where you should really be saying, I have the audacity to say that, no, I'm wavy. Now, he does say that a little bit earlier on. He does say he's wavy. But in this conjunction area, now, why is that also important? Because if you're shrinking yourself here, you are shrinking yourself in your relationship. And when you shrink yourself in a relationship, what ends up happening is you don't say what you actually need in a relationship. You just kind of do and exist. And what can end up happening is you can emotionally drift. Now, this can be very painful for the other party because they can see you emotionally drifting. And if you're not able to communicate what you actually need and want in a relationship, you then become this person who's out at sea. And the other person's like trying to get you back in, but you might stonewall, you might ghost them, you might be trying to struggle to process what you're actually wanting and needing. And dismissives have a really big problem with actually saying what they actually want to need. It takes a very long time because they don't know essentially in that immediate moment what they need. Okay, right? They asked him, what role would you want to play? Right? He said, he's not really sure at first. And then he said, obviously, I want to play Black Jesus. And then said, I want to play a Messiah role, basically, for the community. Right? Again, playing that hero aspect, right? Wants to be a savior. Why? Because the unprotection that you received in childhood, he wants to be protective of other people. But he didn't realize what he wanted. And the reason why, and like myself, people ask me, what do you want to be in like 5 years time? I don't know. I ain't even thought that far. I don't even want to think that far. Why? Because I'm not in tune with my needs. That's the honest truth. A lot of times dismissives are not in tune with their needs. Now, this affects relationships. This affects relationships big time because if you don't know what you need, if you are somebody who's very militant, if you're somebody who doesn't do very well with emotional needs, what can end up happening to the other party is that they are stuck on the other side trying to figure out what's going on. Now, I'm looking at Tia and Tamara, and I'm going to try and do some more research, go deeper. I'm trying to figure out whether she's more anxious or whether she's just a secure attachment. Because after a while, regardless of if you're a secure or an anxious person, dealing with somebody who's dismissive, who does not open up all the time, who's very militant, it can get a little bit boring. It can get a little bit tough. It can get a little bit hard as well. And again, this is speculation. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the truth, but it's something that I noticed. And I'll definitely go deeper in another video to bring you more of the clips on this thing and string you along the story and see what narrative is being played and make you understand where I'm coming from. But hopefully this makes sense for some of you. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button. If you do need coaching, this is the stuff we talk about. I can't lie to you, my coaching it's a 3-month wait at this point now. Can't lie to you. All right, that's how much work we're doing. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button. If you want to do this coaching, click on the description box down below. Much love.